Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
The San Diego City Attorney is still moving ahead with charges against Gaza Solidarity protesters arrested last month at UC San Diego. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma in for Maya Tabulsi. Dozens of those protesters were scheduled to be in court today, but the hearing was canceled. KPBS education reporter MG Perez has the latest on what that means for the pending cases.
Court was in session, and it was business as usual today here at the San Diego Superior Courthouse downtown, without the planned protests that had been scheduled for the courthouse steps this afternoon because the city attorney called off court appearances.
A lot of people were viewing it as like a temporary win, like we're hoping that the charges never get filed.
Udayan Tandon is the UC San Diego Academic Student Employee Chairman for the UAW Local 4811. UCSD academic researchers, postdoctoral scholars, and graduate student workers went on strike earlier this month because of what they called unfair labor practices regarding the arrests of students and supporters of the Gaza Solidarity encampment near the Geisel Library.
Peaceful protest is our right! We'll give up and not fight.
It was torn down by law enforcement officers at the order of UC San Diego Chancellor Pradeep Khosla. That led to charges being considered by San Diego City Attorney Mara Elliott. More than 60 of the protesters were supposed to return to court today, but the appearances did not happen, confusing union leaders who were also defending student protesters from conduct charges by the university.
There's often not like any clear guidance on like how the process will be carried out. It's months long and you don't know like how it will affect your status in the university. And so that's something that's going to be a focus for us.
The city attorney did cancel today's court appearances, but that's it. The delay is designed to give prosecutors more time to look into these cases. Andrew Sharp, Director of Communications for the city attorney, told KPBS prosecutors continue to carefully review the information received from UC San Diego police and other agencies. Prosecutors will make any decisions on filing charges after they have completed their review of the facts. We will have a full statement for the media at that time. The university administration will not comment on the pending litigation or the student conduct investigations now underway. The UAW strike was stopped by a temporary restraining order last week.
Instead of the university like facilitating and fostering protest, have like chosen this path where they want to like stamp it down.
For now, the protests are on hold, along with a wait for justice to be served. MG Perez, KPBS News.
The Roman Catholic Diocese of San Diego filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection today in the wake of hundreds of legal claims from alleged sexual abuse victims. KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen has more on the bankruptcy.
17 years ago, the San Diego Diocese paid nearly $200 million to settle sexual abuse claims from nearly 150 survivors. In 2019, AB 218 extended the statute of limitation on child sexual assault cases. Since then, more than 450 cases have been filed against the diocese. Diocese spokesperson Kevin Eckery says bankruptcy is the only way for the diocese to ensure that all survivors are justly compensated.
If we don't use the bankruptcy process, then we'll have a situation where over 3 years, over 450 people brought claims forward. If we were to deal with these cases sequentially, it's entirely possible that, all the resources might be exhausted after dealing with 10 or 20 cases.
The filing is not a surprise. Last year, Cardinal Robert McElroy warned of the possibility in an announcement to parishioners. The court-appointed liaison counsel for the survivors, Erwin Zalkin, says this is a strategy for the diocese to pay lower settlement claims.
They want to try to get these resolved in the context of a bankruptcy where they can get a discharge of not just these claims, but future claims.
Zalkin says the one bright spot about the bankruptcy filing is that the claims could be resolved faster than in the state court system. He says the parties have been in mediation for the past 9 months and were close to a settlement. Last year, Cardinal McElroy said the current claims could cost the diocese more than $550 million. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
A wildfire is raging in Los Angeles as some western cities are set to see extreme temperatures this week. Some are expected to hit highs not seen in 30 years. Here's Brian Abel with what's behind the severe weather and when the heat will let up.
Hundreds of records could be tied or broken this week as extreme heat risk blanket parts of the Midwest and the Northeast. Some cities in the Northeast, including Montpelier, Syracuse, and Pittsburgh, set to experience high temperatures not seen in 3 decades. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul deploying 50 National Guard members to provide heat assistance across the state.
You should consider a limited, prolonged, or intense outdoor activities.
The expansive, long-lasting heat wave fueled by an intense heat dome. Humidity pushing the heat index, how the heat feels, into the low 100s, with relief not expected until potentially early next week. Meanwhile, nearly 15,000 acres in Southern California scorched by the post-fire in just 24 hours.
This is a relatively fast-moving fire. Every one of us is concerned with the wind. That's the single most driving factor of this fire.
Those winds expected to reach as high as 60 miles per hour, forcing evacuation orders for over 1,200 people northwest of Los Angeles. Much of that area will remain under red flag alerts until Tuesday night. The fire's cause still unknown. In Washington, Brian Abel, KPBS News.
While excessive heat can pose a health risk to everyone, it can be especially hard on the 25 million Americans who suffer from asthma. Coming up, we share tips on how to avoid becoming breathless this summer.
Low temperatures tonight, falling into the 60s for the city, but those winds, they're finally starting to die down. We'll see how more changes unfold throughout the week. That's still to come.
Some financial help is coming for the San Diego College of Continuing Education and its main campus in Mountain View. Today, Congressman Juan Vargas announced $500,000 to rebuild the educational cultural complex. Like many other homes and businesses, the school is still recovering from the January flood. SDCCE says while that storm impacted all campuses, the main campus was hit the hardest.
There's a lot of jobs out there with these technical skills are necessary. If you don't have the technical skills, you can't get these jobs. And if you don't have a facility like this, the people from around this community miss out. And we miss out too, because for society, we need people that are good welders, people that are good auto mechanics.
Vargas says the money came from federal funds. He also says he hopes a bond can be passed to help maintain the educational cultural complex in the future.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, our exclusive interview with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan as he talks about wars in Gaza and Ukraine. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The Republican National Convention is quickly approaching, but former President Trump's recent comments in a closed-door meeting about the host city, Milwaukee, have already been making headlines. Our Washington correspondent, Julia Benbrook, has more.
According to people in the room, former President Donald Trump made some unflattering comments about Milwaukee during a closed-door meeting with GOP members of Congress last week. While Republicans are looking to clarify what he said, Democrats are hoping to seize on the comments. This as both Trump and President Joe Biden try to secure support in this key swing state.
After reports surfaced that Donald Trump referred to Milwaukee, the host city of the upcoming Republican National Convention, as a horrible city, several Republicans tried to clarify the former president's comments.
He wasn't talking about the city. He was talking about specific issues in the city.
Others in the closed-door meeting said they didn't hear it.
We got asked it after the meeting, and I was like, I never heard this once, so I'm not understanding where this is even coming from.
But Democrats are seizing on the reported remarks. The Democratic National Committee responded by launching 10 billboards across the city featuring Trump's quote. And President Joe Biden took to social media writing, "I happen to love Milwaukee." Republicans selected Milwaukee to host their national convention, which starts July 15th.
This is a great place, and the former president and every Republican who will have the chance to come to our great city, they'll see that when they're here on the ground in Milwaukee for the convention.
Milwaukee Mayor Democrat Cavalier Johnson said that insulting the home of tens of thousands of Republicans in Wisconsin could be politically costly for the former president as he seeks another 4 years in the White House.
When in a state that's decided on a razor's edge, that may ultimately cost Donald Trump the election.
Wisconsin will no doubt be an important state in November. Polls show these two candidates in a neck-and-neck race there. Back in 2020, Biden won Wisconsin by about 21,000 votes.
Trump and his campaign quickly pushed back against the characterization of his remarks. Later this week, he's set to visit a Wisconsin city not too far from Milwaukee and could address the reports about his closed-door comments there. Reporting at the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
An Imperial County environmental justice organization has launched a new charging station for electric vehicles. KPBS Imperial Valley reporter Corey Suzuki says it's the latest in its efforts to improve the region's underdeveloped network.
Last week, the longtime environmental justice group Comité Cívico del Valle celebrated the launch of its new public charging station in Calipatria, a small city on the north end of Imperial County. The new station has 4 high-speed electric chargers, which can charge many electric vehicles, or EVs, up to 80% in less than an hour. Comité Cívico leaders say it's a needed step because the Imperial Valley is considered an EV charging desert.
At the core of this project are principles of environmental justice.
Luis Olmedo is Comité Cívico's executive director.
Comité Cívico is committed to ensure Imperial Valley underserved communities have access to clean energy technologies while also supporting the broader goal of equitable access to EV infrastructure across California's rural communities.
The charging stations could be part of a much larger transformation. Researchers with the U.S. Department of Energy have confirmed that the valley is home to large reserves of lithium, a key element in electric car batteries. Imperial County has high hopes of becoming an important hub for California's energy transition. Some state officials said Comité Cívico is moving part of that goal closer to reality.
But this is meaningful.
Yana Garcia is California's Secretary of Environmental Protection.
This means that we can actually begin to address the charging desert that we're in, that we can begin to address the fact that the uptake of zero-emission vehicles in Imperial County is one of the lowest in the state.
Olmedo says the expertise of local workers and union labor was especially important. Comité Cívico hopes to build at least 18 more charging stations in the coming months. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
Wine grape growers in California are asking the community for help in keeping the state's vineyards safe. They are warning about an invasive species called the lanternfly. Leanne Denyer has more.
Aaron Lang's family began farming in what's now San Joaquin County back in the late 1880s.
What we're looking at here is Zinfandel.
These grapes will become wine for Lang Twins Winery and Vineyards in Acampo. Lang believes California's vineyards are a part of the state's character and must be kept safe.
I'm looking for speckled light into the canopy so I can see light through there. That allows the sunlight to get on each one of those clusters during the day.
He worries, though, in the months and years to come, a pest only known so far to be on the East Coast could infiltrate California vineyards like his if the public and ag community are not careful.
If I was looking for a lanternfly, I would certainly be looking inside my canopy here and looking for one of these life stages.
The troublesome spotted lanternfly has been identified in northeastern states. According to the state's Department of Food and Agriculture, live spotted lanternflies have not been found in California to date. The lanternfly feeds on trees and is known to love grapes. They can cause considerable damage to vineyards. Concern about the pests has grown since officials found egg masses at an agricultural inspection station in Truckee in March. A department spokesperson confirmed the finding and went on to say, CDFA performs a statewide survey for the insects in late summer, early fall that coincides with peak activity. This survey has been conducted annually for the past several years, again without detections.
We're completely dependent on visual inspection.
Lang, as well as members of the California Association of Wine Grape Growers, want to make sure people know what the pests look like, the problems they could cause, and what to do if you think you've spotted one.
And its egg masses can look just like a smudge of mud on the side of a smooth surface.
And while live lanternflies have yet to be spotted in the state, Lang believes everyone must be proactive to keep them from coming.
We need to be very, very aware of it.
In Acampo.
This is part of California's identity is the wine culture, and we need to do everything we can to try to protect that.
That was Leanne Danier reporting. The Surgeon General is demanding a warning label on social media apps for the threat they pose to children. This as half of U.S. adults say they get their news from social media at least some of the time. Julia Vargas-Jones has more from Los Angeles.
Americans say that getting their news is not why they're turned to social media, but yet their news seems to keep on finding them there.
It's fast, it's convenient. A lot of the time they're going there for entertainment.
Most news consumers on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X report seeing inaccurate news at least sometimes. But X and Facebook users are most likely to say they see news that seems inaccurate often.
There's sort of like a different level of expectation on these platforms than on the traditional ways that people are getting news.
The study also found Democrats tend to be more skeptical of information on X, while Republicans are more skeptical of information on Facebook. Skepticism that is healthy, media literacy advocate Erin McNeil says.
A key question is who's the author, who made this? Question that follows up is why? What's the purpose?
And younger minds might have an even harder time.
Just because they know how to use the technology doesn't mean that they understand the consequences.
On Monday, the U.S. Surgeon General demanding Congress add a warning label on social media apps for the threat they pose to children.
Not only have companies not demonstrated that their platforms are safe for kids, but there's growing evidence of harm. A warning label would help parents to understand these risks. Many parents don't know that those risks exist.
But advocates say legislation is no substitute for education.
It's not enough. It's never enough. The young people need to have the skills themselves.
Congress is considering regulation, including the Kids Online Safety Act, which aims to put the onus of safety of kids online on the tech companies that run those social platforms. Meanwhile, parents and educators are urged to keep their children safe online and speak to them about the harms of social media. In Los Angeles, I'm Julia Vargas-Jones.
Around 25 million people in the U.S. have asthma, and thunderstorms and summer weather can worsen symptoms. Mandy Gaither has more on the impact severe weather can have on those with asthma.
Spring and fall get a lot of flack for worsening symptoms of asthma, but summer causes concerns too, especially with stormy weather.
The humidity and wind associated with the thunderstorms break those pollens into very, very small particles that can be aerosolized very easily.
Dr. Laurie Manka with National Jewish Health says research shows asthma sufferers are at increased risk of needing to go to the emergency room during severe weather, but these patients can protect themselves.
One, I think if somebody has asthma, trying to really do some reflection about what seems to be the triggers. Is it driven by allergy? Do you have associated allergic rhinitis or inflammation of the sinuses related to allergy?
If allergies trigger asthma, reduce exposure by staying indoors in times of high pollen. Take allergy or asthma medicine as prescribed. Avoid touching your eyes. Shower and change clothes after being outdoors to remove pollen, and keep windows closed. Manka says to also frequently check forecasts.
Knowing where to find pollen counts, air quality index reports in your area to see what it's like outside, before you go outside.
Manka says to go over best treatment options with your doctor and formulate a plan on what to do if symptoms increase. For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Well, as we head through the upcoming days, not much of a change to our June gloom pattern. We had a pretty thick marine layer. Some of it will ease off, but ultimately makes its way through the coast, inland areas, and towards some of the valleys there. As you look towards the mountains, we've had some really gusty winds. Those are easing down as we speak, and hopefully we can ease some of the fire weather risk. However, you'll still note that there can be some smoky skies coming into our mountains and deserts in some spots, especially the farther north you go, with some of the active fires that are already in place across Southern California. Beyond that, then, the big story will be the heat building for the deserts as we trend through the late week. More so the weekend and into next week. We could have an extended period of warmth for us. Tonight, though, going down to 62 for the city as you work your way towards Oceanside, 61 degrees. Borrego Springs, upper 60s for your low. Tuesday's pattern does hold on with that cooler pocket of air driving its way through some of the northwestern U.S. and trying to push into the plains. So that is keeping the heat out of places like Salt Lake City, but it's also meaning kind of a windier setup here for some across the southwest. So the fire dangers are still elevated in the region as a whole. So you do want to use some caution if you are traveling anywhere. That can be a big threat. As we go through tomorrow's forecast, 102 for the high in Borrego Springs. Head to San Diego. Again, we are in the lower 70s. Oceanside coming in at 74, and Ramona 82 for the day. Our trend for the coast does keep the morning clouds for us, then getting into more sunshine, holding on to the 70s all throughout. Really no changes even into the weekend. Inland communities, we're going to stay in the upper 70s, if not lower 80s for a good chunk of the work week. We'll start to nose our way up, but still starting off with those morning clouds, giving way to more afternoon sunshine. Mountain spots, we go up through the 70s and even punch into the 80s by the time we get into the weekend. The challenge will be for the desert communities there as we venture into the upper 100 range towards 110, and we could even be in the 110s as we go into next week. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constancer.
It's becoming extremely expensive to retire in the United States, and because of that, more Americans are looking to retire abroad. But as good as it sounds to retire on a white sandy beach or enjoy gelato in a piazza, the simple life may actually include a lot of red tape. Ivan Rodriguez has more.
Over the last 30 years, the number of Americans looking to settle outside of the United States has tripled, according to a 2024 Monmouth poll.
It's more affordable than it used to be.
The number of Social Security recipients living outside of the country increased from 307,000 in 2008 to more than 450,000 in 2022. Leading some countries to ease visa requirements to attract foreign retirees.
Retirees from the U.S. often bring with them money that can help support the local economy.
Jennifer Stevens of International Living says expats can find a range of benefits in overseas retirement.
The pace of life can be a lot slower in a lot of other countries than it is in the United States. Because the cost of healthcare is so much lower in a lot of other countries, people have the flexibility to sort of, breathe a sigh of relief and relax.
But getting to the simple life can be complicated. Lori Trowinski of AARP suggests people think about estate planning, currency, taxes, and their investments before making the leap.
Tax prep is very important. Planning for medical care is important. Planning for legal situations is also important.
And if you can get through the administrative hassle, Stephen says the most successful expats keep an open mind.
You have to go with the idea that it is an adventure, and you need to be open to the fact that no place is going to be just like the United States.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
Two North County women are reclaiming health and wellness practices for queer people of color. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson spoke with the Afro-Filipina sisters ahead of their summer solstice festival.
I'm Melissa. And I'm Tony. And we are the Sultry Sisters.
Tony and Alyssa Junius have long loved health and wellness. But when they went to conferences and workshops, the leaders were usually white, even though they were teaching things like yoga and burning sage, Alyssa says.
But when you think about all those different wellness practices, they're actually rooted in indigenous communities.
And Tony says the people whose ancestors created these practices often can't afford the workshops to learn them.
Wellness, especially in California, is popular, but it comes with a high price tag.
So the sisters created their own community in 2019, the Sultry Sisters. This weekend will be their third summer solstice festival.
A lot of times after the festival, they'll say, I didn't realize this was like our thing. Like this is like something that we do. And I'm like, what do you mean? So it's like for us to hear the unlearning of what is for us, what is by us.
Alyssa says it's especially needed in North County, where it can be harder for people of color to find community. This year's festival is themed Reclaiming Ancestral Healing. Tickets start at $40 and are on a sliding scale. Scholarships are available. It will include performances, food, and workshops.
So we started this last year as a ritual with our community for our festival.
Inside Carlsbad's new Village Arts, the Junius sisters prepared an altar. In the center are photos of their Lola Winnie and their grandmother Rilla, a bowl of bayaba sleeves for smudging, and a Sankofa bird symbol, feet forward and head turned back, reflecting on the past to guide its next steps. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR Morning Edition is talking about the extreme heat in much of the U.S. right now and the push for FEMA to make heat events one of the disasters the agency responds to. And KPBS Midday Edition continues its coverage of Pride Month with a panel discussion on issues affecting LGBTQ youth in San Diego. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anita Sharma. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.